Hi everyone, my name is Maquette Clark and I'm going to be talking about the glacial landscapes of Mount Desert Island in Acadia National Park. So I've worked there as a park ranger for the last 5 years, and so I think it's important to start at the beginning, give you a little bit of the basics. So Mount Desert Island is largely formed via volcanism about 420 million years ago. That volcanism eventually cooled to be what we know as the Cadillac Mountain granite, and as it was cooling, it caved in on itself, creating a massive caldera. That is a lot of the mountains that we see today are the evidence and remains of that. So how does that impact glaciers? Well, we can see the effects that glaciers have had on that hard rock in roches montagnes, such as the Beehive or the Porcupine Islands with their sheep backs. We can see striations in the rock that tell us the orientation of where the rock is going. So we have, or orientation of the glacier's movement, 155 degrees to 215 degrees roughly. We also can see crescentic gouges, that smiley shaped face, that looking at feature that is common throughout Acadia. You can see them on Great Head, the trail, as well as the landscape, the Gorham Mountain and Cadillac Mountain, just to name a few. And those will also give you an idea of orientation of the glacier. Glacial erratics are some of the most famous and iconic landscapes that visitors come to see when they come to Acadia. Bubble Rock is a gigantic rock that we believe came as far as from Dedham, Maine. There is also the along the shore path, the Balanced Rock, and so that is located in Bar Harbor. And then you have Cadillac Mountain, which has more than enough erratics for the entire story to be told, but it is really interesting to see the different colors and the different granite mineral makeups along those areas. One of my favorite features, though, is the fjord. You saw that correctly. It wasn't a typo, the Somme sound. Now, a fjord is usually about 300 meters deep, very steep walls on either side, deep channel, narrow channel, deep, almost canyon-like feature covered in water. So the Somme Sound is actually not as deep and not as steep as a lot of fjords, say in Norway. So we would consider this a fjord with an A, using the Scandinavian term. So another feature that everybody talks about, comes to see, is Jordan Pond, which is a moraine. So it is a place where the ocean met the landscape at one point, created almost a natural dam. And behind it, you can now see Jordan Pond, which is about 152 feet deep, eutrophic, crystal clear, largely due to the glaciers. You can, in this picture, also see the U-shaped valleys, the rounded mountains, those asymmetrical bubbles there. Then one of the things that I wanted to spend the most time talking about was how glaciers impacted and changed the forest of Acadia. We know this because Sargent Pond, one of the oldest bodies of water in Maine, has been cored, and we can look at the sediment to tell exactly what the forest and the landscape in general would have looked like in the past. So 13,000 years ago to 9,500 years ago, it would have been very much like a tundra, lots of bushes and shrubs. You were not going to have trees yet, because this was like a primary succession. As we moved into 9,000 to 5,000 years ago, we're going to have our spruce, our iconic spruce trees of Maine, and white birches on the landscape. And then something really unusual happens from 5,000 to 1,000 years ago. We lose the spruce. And so instead we see birch, we see beech, we see hemlock trees, which leads nicely to that cooling afterwards, where we return to a spruce fir forest as our final phase of the forest, but we have a mixed woods that everybody comes to see, is very famous for its fall foliage. And we can also look at the lakes and the bodies of water and how they have changed over time. Looking at the water chemistry in these cores, we can look at the phosphorus, and the phosphorus tells us that Sargent Pond itself was once a very active green lake and is now going to be a eutrophic lake where there is not a lot living. And so that was done research by our very own Steve Norton of UMaine. And why it matters is because in Acadia today, people come to experience the landscape. George Dorr, when he, our founder, George Dorr, when he was first going to Congress and saying this needed to be a national park, said part of it was due to that glacial history, to those rocky trails, those rung ladders. Having all of these trees brings in 300 species of birds a year. So understanding and appreciating the landscape of Acadia really does influence, the glacial landscape really influences how people experience Acadia National Park.